I love Indy because of the opportunity. When you talk about Indianapolis, you first start to talk about sports.
If the sport were basketball, Amp Harris would be your assist leader. He has a knack for tapping into the lives of elite professional athletes, their backgrounds, their stories, to share their experiences to help put young people in a winning position.
A lot of us come from humble beginnings ourselves, and so you just want to encourage the kids to just push forward and just fight for your dreams.
Colts great Robert Mathis, one of the big horses in AMP's annual celebrity charity basketball tournament, where kids are the name of the game.
You have to be able to show these young boys and girls that people that look like you come from humble beginnings like yourself, but they stayed in the struggle and they continue to fight. And now you're looking at someone like me who is, a poster child, I like to call myself, for hope and love.
Amp Harris, an Indianapolis native who wears a lot of hats, community activist, business marketer, and event promoter, a Hoosier with a servant's heart. My guest this week on the Business and Beyond podcast. Thanks for joining us for episode 95 of the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. I'm Gary Dick. If Indianapolis born and bred Amp Harris isn't promoting or organizing community events in his hometown, he's the brains behind the brands of artists like singer-songwriter Stephanie Mills and fellow Hoosier comedian Mike Epps.
I love everything about Indianapolis, man. This is a beautiful town right here.
And it is great to have Amp Harris on the podcast this week. Amp, how are you?
I'm good, sir. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. Hey, you are, to put it mildly, you're a busy guy. And I did a little research. You have so many titles: DJ, radio host, promoter, marketer, small business owner, community activist. If you were describing to someone, is there a short description of Amp Harris?
You know what? A short description: child of God. And
good.
Under that umbrella, kind of like feeds into things that are really dear and passionate to my heart. I've only, for me, I've had maybe 1.5 real jobs. I was on radio for probably 12, 13 years, and I had a cell phone company back in the day. Other than that, it's really just been things that I'm passionate about. So whether that be sports, music, entertainment, and my number one driving force behind it all is my community philanthropic work.
Mm-hmm.
I use the things that pay the bills. I've figured out a way to use those things, those assets, and my relationships and what I call magnets to shine a light on my community activist work.
You are passionate about giving back to community. As you mentioned, the Saving Our Youth celebrity basketball game with Reggie Wayne turned into, quite an event. And I think the name says a lot about you, Saving Our Youth. Talk about that and your passion for community, but also youth and young people.
And the funny thing is, Reggie Wayne is the most recent celebrity that has been attached to it, but it actually started close to 30 years ago. And it was an event that I put together with Vivica Fox. The event was at that point, it was just, again, something that was on my spirit. I wanted to utilize what I thought youth would gravitate to. And that's why I call it my magnet. So the celebrity basketball game aspect is really the magnet, the topic to get to the issue. And so what I wanted to do was utilize that celebrity. At the moment was Vivica Fox. And I called it the Vivica Fox Hollywood Weekend in Indianapolis. And I did the very first year at North Central High School. And then after that, it morphed into something where I brought on Haywood Workman, because he and I used to have a business together back in the day called You Would Too. and Haywood Workman played with the Indiana Pacers. So hence, again, the magnet. And then once Haywood left or got traded, I went to Edgerrin James. And then it was the Amp Harrison, Edgerrin James saving our youth celebrity basketball game. Then came Reggie once Edgerrin went to Seattle. But what it really is about and how I utilize, again, my relationships, those are all the topics because I know young people gravitate to those titles, those names, those images, the likeliness of those kind of people. And what the majority of the people that are seeing the title and seeing the game, they don't realize what I'm doing on the backside of this is sitting in classrooms, going to the juvenile center, going to the Boys and Girls Club, going into the inner city, and using those celebrities to have real dialogue conversations with those kids that look like me, come from backgrounds like me. No matter if you're white, black, or purple, you just come from humble beginnings. But I now use the celebrity to tell a story about, because a lot of them come from those same environments. Now we sit down and we don't talk about basketball. We don't talk about movies. We don't talk about music. We literally talk about life. That's the saving our youth part of it.
Yeah.
So the celebrity basketball game was for people like yourself to come in with the media cameras and highlight that. In the meantime, I'm able to use that as myself to show kids that you can become a pro at something other than an athlete, other than a music person. But you need to understand this didn't just happen for these people that you idolize. They too come from broken homes, single parent homes, low income homes. Now you can hear the real story and the real side of where Edgerrin James came from, where Paul George came from, where Kevin Hart came from, where Mike Epps came from. So that's the real backstory to the Ampere Saving Our Youth celebrity basketball game.
Yeah. And when you talk to young people who face challenging backgrounds, futures, you talk with validation because you grew up, you had a tough childhood. Talk a little bit about that. And I'm sure that tough childhood really has defined you as a person.
Yeah, and that's the key. I think a lot of we live in such a society now, especially with social media, that it's driven by images. And it used to be, what we used to hear, because that's where we would get our information from. Now it's what we see. And because of what we see, that has jumped in the front of what we hear. And so as a child growing up, I was fortunate. I was the youngest of 8. I grew up in a single parent home. My mother did everything she could to protect us. I grew up as a God-fearing young man. I grew up with ministers and preachers throughout my entire life. But my mother have always instilled in me is not what you have, is what you do with what you have. And I don't know. I mean, I think it clicked in me when I was maybe 13 or 14. And well, I ain't gonna say I think, I know it did, because at that point, I went through a really tragic situation where I watched, well, I didn't really just watch it, but it just happened in front of me. My stepfather shoot my brother in the head, and my brother died basically right in front of me.
Wow.
This is a 13-year-old boy. So, and I used to couldn't even talk about it without breaking down. And so I learned to face my fears. And as I got older, I am a very faithful person. And I believe that, again, I was the sacrificial lamb because I come from a broken home where there was drug dealers and, drug users and the things that in the Black community, well, in every community, people grow up in those environments, but it never touched me. I don't smoke, I don't drink, I've never been arrested. So I looked at myself as you've been given this platform when people said that you should be broken because of the tragic situation that I saw. And that was just one of many, but that was the one that I think in my brain, it put me in a place where I said, even as a, grown up in this day and age, I ask myself every morning, God, why me? whatever that is. And so I think that my purpose is greater than the titles that people give me. And they don't understand that it has nothing to do with me. I am just a vessel to get out here and stand 10 toes in the sand to be a beacon of hope for that young boy or girl who feels like my life is over because my daddy ain't in the house. My life is over because my family members stay in and out of drugs. My life is over because, I didn't go to college. People think I got like a master's degree because I've been able to sit in so many rooms. But even in that, so I try to let myself be used in the most humble way with the biggest and brightest light that is shined upon me.
Yeah. What do you think kept you from turning to the streets? It would seem that would have been a pretty easy path for you to go down, but you didn't. You chose the right path. What do you think that is?
That's a wonderful question. Again, that's why I said I think that, and I've just recently started to own this, that my pastor, Jeffrey A. Johnson, senior at Eastern Star Church, once told me, "Amp, you are anointed." And my mother used to always tell me that. And I used to be like, whoa, wait a minute, stop saying that. That's too much pressure. I no. Because I really didn't understand what that meant. And for me, it's like, I was always very observant. And, my mother is the strongest person in the entire world to me, because not physically, but mentally, and she's 90 years old, because what she had to endure as a child growing up in Greenwood, Mississippi, segregation, racism, all of these things. But she never, ever wavered. She never, ever, even in what happened with my brother. So to answer that question, I think I was able to discern early on right versus wrong. And that's how I live my life today. Yes, I'm loyal to a fault. Some of my friends were humongous drug dealers, and that never was something that peaked that I wanted to be, because I learned from even though, he passed, but I learned from my older brother what not to do. Just like I learned from my father what not to do as a parent and what to do. So I just think that I had this keen ability to, one, discern right from wrong. And then two, I think a lot of it was I was spared. This is where my faith comes in at, because I feel that I've been put in a place where, I have a purpose.
You mentioned your mother growing up in Mississippi, being exposed to racism. You too, growing up here in Indianapolis, I know in reading a few articles, witness a cross burning, right? It was at the high school, at Decatur Central High School.
Decatur Central High School. Ironically enough, and it's been years since I've been back past that school. My daughter and I just drove down to watch Indiana University play Jackson State. Over the Thanksgiving holiday. And of course we get off on 465 and we have to make that left turn. And I was explaining to my daughter, who's 18 now and a freshman at Howard University, I was explaining to her, like, this happened. And we coming around 465, coming off the freeway on Kentucky Avenue. And I said, that's where I first saw the light in the sky. And we didn't have a clue, because we were part of the busing program, and it was 6 o'clock in the morning. And so for me, none of us knew what it was. But the moment we pulled on the campus of Decatur Central High School, you could see this perfectly carved out cross burning. And it's so eerie to me to this very moment that was the first time I've been back past Decatur Central High School since I graduated in 1986.
Wow.
And so, I laughed with my daughter, because, my daughter looks at me as like a freedom fighter. And I said, but I want you to understand, I have been in this fight for as long as I can remember. But as a grown up now, I can look back, because even then I was on the basketball team and I protested at the school, quit the basketball team, and made the superintendent of Decatur Township come and have a meeting with me and like 2 other kids from my neighborhood and our homeschool advisor, talking to, and I'm a 16, 17-year-old kid, but I understood that wasn't right because I know my history. And so, I'm a real advocate of, in order for you to know your destiny, you got to know your history. So for me, and knowing in what I call the George Floyd movement, hearing my mother tell the stories, because she never really shared what she went through. And, thinking back on some of the things that I've gone through, it's something that sticks up there, just like the death of my brother.
Yeah. Amp, you're very high profile guy in the community, certainly. How would you describe race relations in Indianapolis today? What would be your take on race relations here, present day?
I think that's a kind of like I need to have broader shoulders when we say race relations in it, because it's in so many different factions. When you're talking about just as a Black man, because it's not just me being a Black man walking down the street, but it's also me being a Black man working in corporate America, me being a Black man in the education system, me being a Black man walking through, Walmart. Race is something not just in Indianapolis. I think, again, because like I stated, starting this conversation, images rule our world. Whether if you're in New York City, a Democratic state, if you're in California, a Democratic state, or if you're down south in Alabama or Mississippi, a Republican state. The fact that we don't really talk about race and it is like taboo, race relations in Indianapolis is no different than anywhere else in the country. I feel that and during what I call the George Floyd movement, I do have a different privilege that during that time, I did 2 huge protests downtown with some young high school ladies called Black Women in Charge, and I kind of like mentored them. But one was to bring us together to show that it's not about race as much as it's about the issue of division. And so as a Black man, I understand that if you are, and I'll use this word, an oppressor, or if you are afraid of what you think you may lose, then race becomes a problem. And so when I think about race relations in Indianapolis, it's so far apart from where it could be, because there are really some good people. Every person that I met with during the George Floyd movement was a white, influential man or woman, i.e., and I name names because I have really great relationships with these people. Whether it's Rick Fusion, president of the Indiana Pacers, Mark Miles, Allison Millington over at IMS, Pete Ward with the Indianapolis Colts. And if you notice, it's still within my wheelhouse of what I deal with. I, had conversations with people from Downtown Inc. and a bunch of other people. But at the end of the day, my question to all of these people that I consider to be my really good friends, out of respect, is, are you comfortable being uncomfortable? And in that, race relations can only change through the images of what you guys bring to the table, because what you bring to the table is the unifier, sports and entertainment. So yes, race relations is very prevalent here in the state of Indiana. Racism is very real in the state of Indiana, but I also believe it's based on those that are willing to say, first and foremost, we have a problem with race in the state of Indiana. And if we can't get people to admit that, it's the first thing they would tell you if I was to go to a AA meeting hi, my name is Amp Harris and I'm an alcoholic? Why can't we say, hi, my name is Amp Harris and I believe that racism is prevalent? If we can't get to that point of it, we can hire every minority and put a department together in every major corporation. But until we start seeing Black people in key position with intention, race issues are going to stay the same because all we're going to do is peddle the same information and show the same images.
Much more with Amp Harris when we return. Talk about growing up in Indy, his success in the entertainment world, and much more when the Business and Beyond podcast returns.
At PNC Bank, we're committed to making a difference in the lives of our customers and communities by helping them move forward financially. As a Main Street bank, we try to do right by our customers with every encounter. Our local teams offer personalized financial advice to help guide you in making the best decision. We're proud to be part of your community. PNC Bank. See how we can make a difference for you at pnc.com. Copyright 2022, the PNC Financial Services Group, Inc., all rights reserved.
Welcome back to the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. My guest this week is DJ, radio host, community activist, promoter, marketer. Got a lot of titles, a very high profile guy in Indianapolis, Amp Harris. And Amp, you're a worker. I mean, you have a lot of different jobs. You stay active. And I know doing a little research, music, very important to you. Were you DJing at the age of 13?
I started, yes. I grew up in a music family. I used to play drums when I was younger. My brother was a musician. My sisters were singers. So it was in our family. And I just always gravitated to music. And then, I spent a lot of time in New York as a younger kid. And so I picked up on a lot of different things. So I started DJing at the age of like 12, 13. And it's just something that just organically happened. And from that, I worked here in Indianapolis with Tony Lamont, who is a longtime radio guy, Thomas Sparkle Sox Griffin, longtime radio guy that was on radio. And it wasn't something, I used to DJ with those guys and I was just a club DJ. And I became really popular because I would infuse a lot of my East Coast New York experiences and bring them back to Indianapolis. So I stood out a little differently than a lot of other club DJs. And I was DJing in over 21 clubs when I was 16, 17. I used to play basketball at Decatur Central, catch the bus and, from Martinsville back to Decatur Central, a bus from Decatur Central back to 30th and Broadway. and then, that after that, go DJ in a club for under 21 parties. And that was kind of like my theme. And that's where I was able to influence, young kids and teach them how to act in clubs and so forth. So that, I started my Amp Harris production company in 1993. And then I became a promoter and I was promoting concerts, comedy concerts at Market Square Arena, the Murat Theater, people like Martin Lawrence, Public Enemy, Salt and Pepper, you name it. I was doing it. And I was young. I was in my 20s then. And then, they asked me, I never wanted to be on radio. That was never one of my dreams. They asked me to start a mix show on WTLC, which is what got me into it. And the show became so popular. They actually still do it now on WTLC. It's called The Basement Party. And they do it on the weekends. And so I started that. And it just kind of like everything just started happening. And that's why I said, it's just a gift. And I'm thankful that I've never really had to, because I don't write anything down. I don't create a business plan. I didn't. And that's what throws a lot of people off. I really believe that I am led to be where I'm at. And I don't have to conform, if I may, because organically I kind of did this my way. And so, from the relationship side of it, I started with professional athletes and manage. I hate the word title management because I only officially manage one person now, and that's this legendary artist by the name of Stephanie Mills now, currently. But I've been impactful in the careers of Mike Epps. I mean, just locally, not national people. I could name some, but like locally, Mike Epps, Edgerrin James, Reggie Wayne, work with Peyton Manning, did stuff with Andrew. All of these different people, the Indianapolis Colts, the Pacers, Indiana Black Expo, UNCF, and it's just something that organically just happened. It's hard for me to even talk about it because most people have a blueprint of how they got to where they are.
Right.
I really don't.
Well, to me, I think you have been successful in cultivating those relationships with high profile people because, and again, I know in reading some articles, Mike Epps, as an example, the great entertainer, says he gets as much, from you positive wise benefit from your relationship. And I think that kind of feeds on itself. It's something very positive. And that's the other thing about you, Amp, that I noticed. You've got a positive attitude, so there's so much negativity in the world, social media and the entertainment business, all those things. You bring positivity to the table, and based on the challenges you had as a youngster, you think you could be a bitter guy, but you're not.
No, because I learned, again, that's why I say my mother is the strongest person that I know, because all the trials and tribulations that she has endured, mine doesn't even compare. But what I can do is see that she is somebody that never allowed the worst of the worst to define her. And so I live a mantra every day that I live a stress-free life. Not to say that I don't have issues like all the rest of us, but I don't let those stresses define me. I'm a firm believer as a faithful person that whatever is meant for me, good, bad, or indifferent, is for me. And, I used to challenge myself on that years ago. So I don't know how, and I have these conversations with national people all the time. And they say to me, man, you're always smiling, you're always this, you're always that. From a positive side, like, how do you do that? And I think it's a mindset, to be honest, it's a mindset that I tell myself things that I can't control, I don't let them control me. And someone else's emergency isn't mine. And then the last thing and the most important thing is self-love. I am really big on, I'm in love with Amp Harris. A lot of times what we do is we fall in love with the other, whatever the other is, the job, the woman, the man, the golf club, the liquor, the whatever it is. And I've learned to be okay with me. When people talk about mental health issues, I'm a big advocate of speaking about mental health because I know what I went through mentally. I shouldn't be able to stand and have these kind of conversations. But what I know that I've had to put myself through to get to this space is looking myself in the mirror and asking myself, good or bad, what part did you contribute to that situation? And most people are afraid to do that because a lot of times they have to look themselves and say, oh, you were the reason that happened. See, I'm not afraid of that anymore. And people in entertainment, they're able to mask it because they can always sing a joke, bounce a ball, whatever their career is, that's what they use. And I am just a beacon of hope that trouble don't last always unless you allow it to. So that's why I can get up in the morning and be okay with whatever happens. I don't, because what can I do? Ultimately at the end of the day, it's like sit there and cry about it, or you can fall down, truly get back up. And I always tell people, it doesn't matter to me whether if you a believer in faith in God, find you something that you can believe in that influences your life in a positive way. That's all that matters to me.
The high profile people you mentioned, and there are numerous ones that you can call as friends. Are there characteristics that in your interactions with entertainers, athletes, and others, do you take away any particular characteristics that these high profile, again, entertainers, athletes have?
It's all, and it's not, I mean, let me expand on that part too, because it could be it could be the faith-based preacher. It could be the drug dealer. It could be the politician. It could be the president of a Fortune 500 company. I look at them all the same. And what I am keen on is spirits. Someone once told me I attract wounded people, and I laughed because I'm like, oh, snap. That's a great assessment of me, because I'd never thought of it that way. But then it also makes sense because of what you're pointing out in terms of, me always being happy or always being positive. That would make sense that I would be, those kind of people would be drawn to me. And I get asked this question all the time. What do you do to make those kind of people like you? And I'm like, is that like a backhanded compliment? Or like, why do I have to do something? Why can't I just be me? And I said, ultimately, that's what I do. I've learned to respect me before I like them. And I don't care how much money you have, what your accomplishments are. If you are a bad person with a bad spirit, you can go do whatever you want. I'm fine over here by myself. And I tell them that, like, I'm okay without having stand next to the biggest celebrity in the room. So yes, there is, I think, and this is something that I've had to learn to be okay with, that I have a discernment of good versus bad. That's the word that I was looking for earlier to describe why I was able to stay away from the bad things. And then a lot of it is prayer and luck. Being in the right place at the wrong time happens a lot of times. But yeah, it's really based on a person's spirit with me. It doesn't matter, because a lot of my real friends, they retire. And what you tend to see is once those people retire, the people that are around them, that relationship ain't the same, because there's always a give and take a part of the relationship. And if you don't have anything else to give me, I'm going to the next one. Mm-hmm. And see, I'm just not like that. I'm a loyalist.
Well, Amp Harris, you have worked very hard to build a really great brand in our community. And importantly, you've given back to community in so many ways. So really do appreciate you taking the time to join me on the podcast. And again, really appreciate all you do for Indianapolis and Indiana as well.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you having me. And if those that want to, participate or support Amp Harris, go to my foundation website, which is ampharrisfoundation.org. And you'll see just a snippet of some of the stuff that we do.
Perfect. Amp Harris, my guest this week on the Business and Beyond podcast. Really appreciate you joining us as well on the podcast. It's a weekly conversation with achievers in business, sports, entertainment, and beyond. And you can download all of our episodes and get Indiana business news 24/7 at InsideIndianaBusiness.com. I'm Gary Dick. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.